Hello everybody, welcome back to Kanga TV, home of North Melbourne fans, and welcome to a fresh video here on the channel. At the start of 2025, I published a video with all of my predictions for the upcoming season and North Melbourne. Today we are here to revisit all of those, see what I got right, what I got wrong, and what was just completely outrageous to say at the time, and reflecting upon it now. I will leave the original video down in the description below if you wanted to watch the entire thing from start to finish. It was published on the 9th of January 2025. We're sitting here now at the end of the season, and it's time to reflect on all things North Melbourne season 2025. I will not wait any longer. Let's jump straight into the video. Starting with ladder position and wins for the year, I've tipped North to win 8 games this season and finish 14th on the ladder. Heading into season 2025, I don't think that a prediction of 8 wins and a ladder position of 14th was anything outrageous. And when you look at the season as a whole, Melbourne, they finished in 14th position this season with 7 wins, and then Port Adelaide finished 13th on the ladder with 9 wins. So as a whole, and the way the season played out across the competition, that was a pretty reasonable guess as to where we could finish if we were able to win 8 games for the season. I think I speak on behalf of majority of North fans, where I was probably underwhelmed with our output this season in terms of wins and losses. I've said throughout the entire season that tangible improvement through a win and loss ratio is what I would largely be judging the season on if there was one marker to judge improvement and to judge progress. So I do think that we should have won 8 games for the year. We probably could have won more. There were quite a few close games, and we were in games for a lot longer this season as opposed to 12 months ago. So I think that was an okay prediction. I'm happy with where that's at, given where the season ended as a whole. I think that would have been achievable, and we probably could have been in that position. But unfortunately, we just couldn't get there and seal the deal on too many occasions. Moving on to individual accolades, and I've tipped Harry Sheezel to take home his second Sid Barker medal in 3 seasons. At the end of last season, he did suffer with injury a little bit. He missed the last couple of games of the year. That could have been the difference between him making the All-Australian side and not, and him taking home another best and fairest, and not to discredit the season that LDU had in 2024. I think we all agree it was definitely his best at North, and Tristan Xerri also had an excellent season. I think those 3 will be around the mark once again this season. I think they are probably the trio to beat the Australian team in 2025. I think he was stiff probably to miss out, to be honest, in 2024. Like I said, maybe injury the last couple of rounds of the season maybe didn't do him any favours. I think predicting Harry Sheezel to win the best and fairest was probably a conservative and a safer bet, and obviously he was a dual Sid Barker medalist this season alongside ruckman Tristan Xerri. What I will say about those predictions though is expecting the top 3 from last season to be on the podium once again this year was an interesting gamble, and it did pay off as LDUX and Shees did finish in our top 3 for the second year in a row for the Sid Barker medal. Harry Sheezel making the All-Australian side unfortunately wasn't a look in for the squad, let alone the final 22. I think with Harry, and we've spoken about this a few times throughout the season, he took a while to really warm into the season. He was asked to play in so many different roles and plug so many different holes across the field where we are missing talent, or we are missing role players, and he is so talented and he is multifaceted. There is so much that he can do and so many roles he can adapt to, but he probably wasn't really given long enough in a fair few of those positions, at least until the halfway mark of the season, to find any consistency or confidence in those positions. But from the second half of the season, he was a lock in that midfield, and we just saw him grow from strength to strength, and he had some pretty epic performances in the second half of the season. So I feel like betting on Harry Sheezel to win the Sid Barker medal this year was maybe more of an obvious or safer choice, but it was definitely one that came to fruition. In terms of our leading goal kicker, I've actually gone for Paul Curtis. Sticking with Paul Curtis, he is someone I'm expecting to have a big breakout season. Like I said, I think he'll be our leading goal scorer in 2025. I just feel like while his 2024 was excellent, I think he does have what it takes to hit yet another level in 2025. Colby McKercher is going to have an incredible year. With Colby McKercher moving moving into the middle, I think Riley Hardiman would fit perfectly down back. The final player that I expect to have a breakout year, and this is a bit of a left of centre one, is actually Bryn Teakle. I think Bryn Teakle has got so much potential to really own that second ruck, third forward spot. Predicting Paul Curtis as our leading goal scorer for 2025 was a little bit of a riskier one, but not a bad shout in the end. He and Cam Zurhaar, with 38 goals apiece this season, were equal second at North Melbourne for goals scored in 2025, just behind Nick Larkey with 41 goals from 17 games. I also predicted Paul Curtis on the back of that to have a breakout season, and did he have a breakout season or what? He had the entire competition talking, and in the first 5 or 6 rounds of the season was everyone's lock for the All-Australian small forward. Unfortunately, a couple of suspensions throughout the season derailed his form a little bit. I found that when he came back from that initial 3-week suspension, he did take a few weeks to get back into the swing of things, but he was on fire towards the end of the season. Dangerous not just offensively but defensively as well. He's such a live wire in our forward line, and you always feel like he's going to have an impact. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how he continues to develop as seasons go on. No doubt he's going to start attracting a little bit of attention now that he is coming off the back of a career best year, but I do back him in. He's still so young, and he just seems to be running at it with a full head of steam, and I can only see him getting better and better once again. Along with Paul Curtis, I predicted Colby McKercher, Riley Hardiman and Bryn Teakle to have breakout seasons at North Melbourne. 2 out of the remaining 3 ain't so bad. I feel like Colby McKercher was probably a safe bet as well to tip for a breakout year, and that didn't look so sure in the first half of the season. He almost looked to have a little bit of second year blues. I think we all predicted him to ease into a role in the midfield, but it wasn't quite the case. We actually saw his best form return from that Richmond game earlier on in the season when he was moved into defense once again. The way he can just run and distribute the ball off the halfback, it really unlocks him to do whatever he wants. And I've said this a couple of times throughout this season, but I feel like he was given the license to run and to play a little bit more creatively, and that he did. He was definitely instrumental. He was definitely a playmaker for us, and I think if we can keep him in that position and continue to foster his growth, he's only going to get better and better. Riley Hardiman was the other one. I can't believe how long it took for us to cement his spot in this starting lineup. He didn't get a look in the first few rounds of the season. Then he was brought in as a sub a couple of times. Once he was able to get full game time, he was great in the back line as well. He's a really great user of the footy as well. He is great defensively too. We obviously had Jackson Archer missing for the majority of the season, so Riley eased into that small defender role pretty well. Although he's not exactly that lockdown defender, he did do a great job and contributed to that backline structure overall, which looks to have moved from the typical one-on-one lineup and working more in that zone element, which seemed to really benefit him and benefited the backline as a whole once we got the right mix in there and everyone could understand their role and what they had to do to contribute. Bryn Teakle, obviously far from a breakout season. He was delisted at the end of season 2025. I think for him, there was a few elements there. Last season, we were so desperate for someone to come in and help Nick Larkey as that second tall forward, and he was able to take a mark. He's not a bad set shot at goal, but I think it was pretty obvious early on this season that we know what he is going to be able to do as a player. We kind of know his limitations. He is what he is. I think he's not going to get any better than what he is at the moment, whereas someone like a Callum Coleman-Jones, who's just signed a 1-year extension, potentially has some more upside, especially moving forward in a forward capacity, not necessarily in the ruck. We've obviously got Tristan Cherry there and we've got Taylor Goad coming through. So as a forward, we probably do need to look at someone who may be able to replace Jack Darling in the next season or two, given his age profile. We've got Cooper Trembath down there, sure, but we probably need another big-bodied key forward. So for Callum Coleman-Jones, it's probably worth investing in him over Teakle, as we know he's got more potential as a forward than Teakle does. It is a shame. I do feel like Bryn Teakle is a really good backup option, but I think now with Goad coming through, we probably don't need him there for the ruck option as a backup anyway. Hopefully Callum Coleman-Jones can stay fit and come in as that third ruckman if and when required. Now moving on to our first year players, and I think Finn O'Sullivan will be our best first year player. Sorry, Jack Darling, but I think Finn has you covered on this one. But another one I'd love to see, and I actually think we might see a little bit of, is Luke Urquhart as well. He's a bigger body midfielder, and he's someone that we brought in to really provide a bit of grunt and a bit of toughness in the middle of the ground in an underplayer, which is something that we might not really have at the moment. The same way that it was a safe bet with Harry Sheasel winning our best and fairest, Finn O'Sullivan being our best first year player. He was the one who really broke onto the scene. He made his debut in round one and he played almost every game this season. I think he only missed the one game through illness, but he was awesome for North this year. He was just so cool, calm and collected, and that's something I did say in this prediction video at the start of the year. He's just so trustworthy with ball in hand. We saw the way he was able to distribute the ball off halfback, and even when he pushed a little further afield, he's super confident and it doesn't really look like anything phases him, and I absolutely loved what he brought to North Melbourne this year, and he'll definitely be a solid contributor for us moving forward. Luke Urquhart, the other one, we do still need that big-bodied midfielder, and I do think that if we can get Luke Urquhart on the park, he did have a few injuries in the middle of this season, which probably delayed his break into the senior side. I do think, though, if he can have another solid preseason in the gym, if we can get his body looking good and ready for AFL level, then I would love to see him make a debut next season, especially if we aren't able to attract that style of midfielder from another club. We were obviously keen on Marcus Winhager, but he decided to stay at St Kilda. So I think investing in our own backyard, I think Luke Urquhart still is a bit of a wild card, and I think he could be a really great asset for us. And we already have him at Arden Street. So I think it really is about investing in him and hopefully be able to have him in this side in season 2026. A few players that come to mind when I think of players that are under pressure, the obvious one in my mind is Cam Zurhaar. He signed a big 5-year deal on the back of 75% what we know he can do and maybe 25% of what we hope he is able to do at a consistent level. Phillips, he did receive a 1-year contract at the end of 2024, but again, he was in and out of the side, and he kind of has been for most of his career. Nick Larkey is probably the other one for me that is under a little bit of pressure. It's the three All-Australians that we brought in over the trade period, Parker, Darling and Daniel. I do think there's an element of pressure for them to perform. The other few I'll just mention is our two co-captains, Luke McDonald and Jai Simpkin, for different reasons. I think there's pressure on them to perform alongside these three guys as well, and maybe to a lesser extent Zach Fisher as well. Quite a few players under pressure there, and all for different reasons. Some fighting for their careers and some proving to us that they do deserve the big contract and the reported big money that we had spent on them. Cam Zurhaar was definitely my number one criticism in this segment, and I am so pleased to say that he ticked every single box and met every single expectation I had from him going into season 2025. In that video, I do speak about needing consistency from Cam, and we know the kind of player he can be. Heading into season 2025, I should say, we knew what he was capable of, but he wasn't really delivering on it as often as we needed. But I loved Cam Zurhaar's year. Equals second in our goal scorers for 2025 alongside Paul Curtis. Played almost every single game, missed the last one through injury, and half of the Richmond game in round 23 as well. Only held goalless on 2 or 3 occasions this season, but what I loved from Cam is he still is that player that can spark something for us. I think he is still that inspiration up forward. In that Melbourne game at the MCG later on in the season, he kicked 3 goals in the third quarter, and he was the one that was going to get us back into a winning position if any player could. So the fact that we're able to still have that element of Cam Zurhaar now married with more consistent performances is just tick, tick, tick for me. In the past, we've seen him have these wonder quarters or these wow factor games where you've kind of captured lightning in a bottle, and then he would go missing for 2 or 3 weeks at a time, whereas now he has those big quarters or has those big games, and then in the 2 or 3 games potentially in between, he goes quiet, but he's still contributing on the scoreboard, and that is a massive improvement for Cam Zerha and a massive tick for me. On the other end of the scale, Will Phillips unfortunately wasn't able to cement a spot in this side once again. I don't know where he's going to end up at the end of this season and heading into next season. I think the trade period will probably dictate Will Phillips's future a lot without a contract at the moment, and it probably looks unlikely that he'll be at North next year, but anything can happen over the next few weeks. So fingers crossed for Will Phil that he can continue his career in season 2026, be it at North or be it elsewhere. In hindsight, putting Nick Larkey in the under pressure category is probably a little bit wild. He kicked 70 odd goals in season 2023 in a side that won 3 games for the season. I understand that his season last year probably underwhelming in comparison. I thought he had a solid year this year, Suv. He was excellent to start the year, and then he did go missing for about 6 or 7 games in the middle of the year. Crazy to think that we were even discussing the potential of dropping him for a couple of weeks back to the VFL. I think you trust your key players and leaders and keep them in the side and trust that they will return to form in time, which he did return to form after the bye. He definitely refound some of his best form before struggling with a PCL injury in the latter half of the year and saw him miss a fair few games towards the end of the season. I still think that he is our best and number one key target up forward, and the inclusion of Jack Darling, we've spoken about time and time again throughout the season, really helped not only his game individually but the forward line and its functionality as a whole. So happy with the return that we got from Suv. On Jack Darling, really happy with his season alongside Luke Parker as well. I thought both of those guys were excellent for us this season and contributed in their own way. I think Caleb Daniel, I had a lot of question marks around Caleb Daniel for majority of the year. I just didn't know why it wasn't working. Was it the position that we were trying to play him in? Was it the game style he was struggling to adjust? Was it the disposal? It was pretty poor for a lot of the time. He just wasn't really contributing positively to this side. I really enjoyed the last month of footy from Caleb Daniel. He seemed to run and carry the ball a lot better, and he was able to get himself in more favourable positions and contribute to help us move the ball up the ground. For me, the judge is still out on that one. I don't know if this is a successful recruitment or not, and I don't think I will have a good understanding of it until I see him in action next season and see if he can continue the form he showed in the back half of season 2025, because for majority of this season I was really unimpressed and really underwhelmed and just didn't really understand how he was positively contributing. So happy to see him finish the season off on a positive note, and I will be looking forward to hopefully seeing that continue next season. The last few, and I was looking at our leaders, Jai, Luke McDonald, and I even threw Zach Fisher's name in there at the end. Zach Fisher's season was a write-off. He did struggle with injury a fair bit throughout this season as well, and then when he was fit, he struggled to break into the side. He just lacks polish and finish for me, Zach Fisher. I think his intention is great. I think his work rate is great. I think his willingness to hunt and chase his own ball is great, but there were a couple of times this season where he was playing forward of the ball in that small forward kind of role and just was unable to finish when he was having shots on goal. I think it was that Fremantle game. He kicked 0 goals 3 later in the game, and he probably could have been the hero and instead just butchered every opportunity in front of goal. So definitely something he needs to work on in the off season, and who knows what next season will bring for him. It kind of feels like another big recruit that has just kind of gone to waste. This video in January was published before Luke McDonald stood down as co-captain, but I think his season was excellent. I think he refound some of his best form, kind of like his best and fairest form from season 2020 before his season was cut short due to a shoulder injury. Just loved the work that he did. Not too many opponents got past him, and I think that he has proven that he is still an asset for us on field moving forward. Also his presence as a leader, maybe not in an official captaincy role, but he is forever going to be a leader of this football club while he is out on the field. Jai Simkin, on the other hand, we've spoken a lot about Jai over the past few weeks here on the channel. channel, definitely had his moments where he was inspiring and then had other moments where he just went missing. He missed a few weeks through injury as well, but probably struggled, like Zach Fisher, a little bit to finish with polish and class where we required until he was moved to the wing in the last couple of games of the season. Definitely his two best performances of the year. I guess the reality with Jai is it's not good enough in my eyes if his best game for the season was as captain of the All-Stars back in February in the exhibition game against Fremantle. He's got to be able to find that form and apply it to his teammates and to North Melbourne and make sure that this club is at the forefront first and foremost. So a lot to play out with Jai, as we know, over the trade period, and we will reassess where and how he fits into this side in 2026 after that. I think that LDU and Tristan Sherry should be part of that discussion as well. I think all three of them are set for another monster season, and it would be a real shame if they weren't recognised at a league level, at least with the nomination into the squad. I also think that Jackson Archer could be a chance to take out the league's most courageous player. He plays just like his dad did, and he had an incredible second half of the year, a real breakout year for him last year. So I'm looking forward to seeing if he can bring that once again. Award season was once again a bit of a touchy subject for all North Melbourne fans. Unfortunately, no North Melbourne player featured in the All-Australian squad of 40. I would have thought that Tristan Sherry had done enough to cement his spot there, not necessarily in the side, but in the squad at the very least. That 3-week suspension at the end of the season probably hurt his chances more than we realised. Jackson Archer, for the AFLPA's most courageous player, was also a little bit of a miss, considering that Arch missed majority of season 2025 through suspension and then through injury, which was a shame. I think we really felt his presence was missed for majority of the year. That sort of toughness, we could have used a bit of that in the back line at various stages of the season, so maybe not a bad shout heading into the season, but given the events that followed, specifically Jackson Archer in season 2025, it's no surprise that that one didn't come to fruition, unfortunately. And finally, some storylines I'm looking forward to following in season 2025, and top of the list is Luke Davies-Uniacke. I personally think he will re-sign and commit to North Melbourne for life with a mega deal before the bye in season 2025. I also think that Finn O'Sullivan will finish top 3 in the NAB Rising Star. I also think that Riley Hardiman will earn himself a nomination, and a name I haven't brought up is Zane Dersma, but I also think he will be nominated for the Rising Star this year as well. I also think we're going to win our first game of the year. We did win our first game back in 2023 against West Coast at home, and I feel like we could get the jump on the Western Bulldogs on a Saturday night blockbuster to open our season. Speaking of wins, I also think we will win our game against the West Coast Eagles in Bunbury at Hands Oval. I think winning one game over in WA would classify as a success, but I think the game against Fremantle at Optus Stadium should still be competitive. A couple more to finish us off, and I think North will finally get a win at Gather Round, and finally I think Braden George will make his long-awaited debut for North Melbourne in season 2025. A few big storylines there heading into the season. I guess my finest moment was the prediction of LDU re-signing before the bye. I never really felt like LDU was going to go anywhere, and while we've seen a lot of players be tempted by the big money that's been thrown around since the AFL season ended, I wouldn't have begrudged him if that's the path that he went down. But I think for North it was really important for us to secure his services long term. I think the buy-in from the players is going to be just as important going forward, as is our ability to attract talent. I do think that he probably under-delivered in comparison to the big contract that we did put in front of him and he ultimately signed. But the flip side of it is, if LDU had left, we would have come under just as much criticism. So I think now the onus is on us and our incoming development staff to be able to try and bring out the best of him more consistently, because LDU's best is one of the best midfielders in the competition. He finished top of our Brownlow votes for the second season in a row. We know that his best is just about the best in the competition. So how to bring that out of him consistently, how to make the most of his strengths, and how that contributes to the side as a whole is definitely one for us that we really need to work on with him in the off season. Unfortunately for the Rising Stars, I think a lot of our younger players did contribute really nicely to this side. I think that Finn O'Sullivan definitely flew under the radar. I would say from a competition perspective as a whole, he's not the flashy superstar player that some of the other nominees were, but I was really comfortable as a North supporter watching him week in, week out, and knowing that he is a safe user of the footy and we can really trust him with ball in hand, and he'll be a great asset moving forward. Riley Hardiman, I thought he was probably unlucky. He had a few really, really big games in the middle part of the season, and Zane Dersma, of course, wasn't able to secure a spot in this side. Another one to watch over the upcoming trade period, and no doubt we'll be speaking a lot about Zane in the next few weeks. In terms of the big wins and losses, 1 from 3, I did expect us to beat, well, I don't know if I expected us to, but I tipped us to beat West Coast in Bunbury at Hands Oval, and I did say that that second game at Optus Stadium would be competitive. In that video, I said that 1 win from 2 would have been a success for the Western Australian program in its first year, and I definitely stand by that on reflection, the way those 2 games played out, the coverage for North in the media across the week, the tourism for WA. There were heaps of fans that travelled over. Both of those games drew some big crowds, so I think it was a big tick overall there. Did get close to the Bulldogs, and in hindsight, a 16-point loss probably wasn't so bad given how the rest of the season played out and some of the other results that followed. We did have our first win of the season in round 2 in emphatic fashion against the D's. Definitely one we'll be thinking of for quite some time moving forward as North fans. Unfortunately, gather around another loss there. We were in that game against the Gold Coast Suns for the first 3 quarters, but they broke the game open with a few minutes to go in the last, and we all know what happened in the last quarter, running away with a 9-goal victory. Sadly, we didn't get a Braden George debut as most of us were hoping for, his body letting him down once again. I think it is a real shame that we haven't been able to see the best of Sausage in our senior side. We know that he could be something special if he can get his body right. Josh Goda is the same. Both of them have a 1-year contract heading into season 2026, and if neither of them can get their bodies right and out on the park, it will probably come down to a few really difficult calls that have to be made. Those conversations no one wants to think about and no one likes to probably think about in football. It's definitely the worst time of year, but realistically, when we're looking to build this list and get the best out of this list moving forward as we try and push up the ladder, we do need to make some of those difficult calls. So fingers crossed that Braden George's debut comes in season 2026 and he's been able to impact this side the way that we all believe he can and will be able to do. Those were all of my pre-season predictions for North Melbourne in 2025. How do you think I went? What were some of your wildest predictions that came to fruition or were just absolutely horrible calls? I want to hear all of your thoughts in the comments down below. I will also leave a link to that full pre-season prediction video in the description should you want to go back and watch it all. We can continue the conversation as always across socials, Kanga TV show, across Instagram, Facebook, X, and on email. The trade period is only a few days away, and I think for all of us that is Christmas. So looking forward to seeing how North Melbourne is able to improve their list ahead of season 2026. I look forward to covering all of that with you here on the channel as always. Go Roos.